Look at that door closing. Watch how she waves one last time through that little window in the door, smiling. That's the last moment Jennifer Perez was ever seen alive. The last smile. The last wave. The last time anyone would see her breathing. Because what happened in the darkness that followed, what came back to that quiet suburban porch in Lake Stevens, Washington, on the night of March 14, 2021, turned a simple act of kindness into the final mistake of her life. You just watched 12 seconds that law enforcement would study frame by frame for months. 12 seconds that captured a transaction, a tip, a thank you, and a predator making his calculations. Because that man in the red hoodie, he wasn't finished with his delivery. Not by a long shot. And that $50 tip Jennifer handed him, it wasn't just generosity. To him, it was confirmation, information, opportunity. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back. Let's understand who Jennifer Perez was before she became a case file. Before her name was written on evidence bags and crime scene photos. Before her front porch became cordoned off with yellow tape and her home became a place no one wanted to enter. March 14, 2021 was a Sunday. For most people in Lake Stevens, a small city about 35 miles north of Seattle, it was just another quiet evening at the end of a long weekend. The kind of night where you order pizza, maybe catch up on a show, wind down before Monday crashes back in. Jennifer Perez was 28 years old. She worked as a graphic designer for a marketing firm in Everett, mostly from home even before the pandemic made remote work commonplace. She'd moved to Lake Stevens 2 years earlier, buying a small 2-bedroom house on Cedar Lane, one of those tree-lined streets where everyone knows everyone, or at least that's what people tell themselves. Jennifer was known in the neighborhood as friendly but private. She'd wave from her porch, she'd make small talk at the mailbox. But she lived alone, kept to herself mostly, and that was fine. Her family lived in Spokane, about 4 hours east. She had friends in Seattle, she had her work. She had her routines. And on that Sunday night, her routine was simple. Order food, relax, enjoy the quiet. The pizza order came through the Scoot and Go app at 7:43 p.m. A large pepperoni pizza from Mario's, a local place she'd ordered from maybe half a dozen times before. Standard delivery. Nothing unusual. The app estimated arrival at 8:15 p.m. It actually arrived at 8:22 p.m. Those details matter. Every minute matters now. What you saw in that footage was the handoff. Jennifer taking the pizza box with her left hand. Her reaching into her pocket with her right and pulling out cash. Not just the cost of the pizza. Not just a standard $5 or $10 tip. $50. Why did she tip $50 on a $23 pizza? That's the question investigators would ask her neighbors, her co-workers, her family. Was she just generous? Was it a mistake? Did she grab the wrong bill? Her sister would later tell detectives that Jennifer had been having a good week. She'd just landed a major client for her firm. She was happy, feeling grateful. And yeah, she was the type to overtip when she was in a good mood. That was Jenny, her sister said during the investigation. If she was happy, she wanted to share it. Such a small thing, such a human thing, such a deadly thing. The man in the red hoodie took that $50 bill and he calculated. You can't see his face in the footage, not clearly. The baseball cap, the angle, the way he kept his head down. But you can see him look at that money in his hand as he walks away. You can see him pause for just a fraction of a second before he gets on that Scoot and Go delivery scooter. What was he thinking in that moment? Was it already forming in his mind? Or did it come to him later, circling the block, feeling that cash in his pocket, remembering that door, that house, that woman alone? Watch that footage again in your mind. Look at how he parks that scooter. It's facing away from the house, exit ready. Most delivery drivers pull up however is convenient, right? They're thinking about efficiency, about the next delivery, about getting through their shift. But his scooter is positioned for departure, like he was already thinking about coming back. At 8:23 p.m., Jennifer closed her door, locked it. The porch light stayed on, casting that warm glow you saw in the footage. Inside, investigators would later determine she set the pizza box on her kitchen counter, grabbed a plate, poured herself a glass of wine. Her phone showed she scrolled through Instagram while eating. She texted a friend at 8:47 p.m. about a brunch plan for next weekend. Everything normal, everything safe, everything about to shatter. At approximately 10:15 p.m., every light in Jennifer Perez's house went dark. Not just her lights, the whole house. Complete electrical failure. And here's what makes your skin crawl. It wasn't a neighborhood outage. It wasn't a blown transformer or a storm taking out the grid. It was localized, specific, deliberate. Someone had gone to the electrical box on the side of Jennifer's house and flipped the main breaker. In the dark of a quiet Sunday night, someone had crept along the side of her home, found the gray metal panel half hidden behind a shrub, and cut her power. That's when the footage shows the shadow. That's the moment you saw, those last 2 or 3 seconds of the security camera recording before its battery backup died. A figure emerging from the right side of the frame. Moving low, moving quiet, moving toward that door Jennifer had closed and locked more than 90 minutes earlier. And you can see it, can't you? The way that silhouette rises slowly to peer through the glass. The way it stays there, motionless, looking into the darkness of Jennifer's home. That was the last thing the camera recorded, the last piece of evidence, the last witness to what was about to happen. What would you do if you were alone in your house and every light suddenly died? Would you grab your phone, use the flashlight? Would you call someone? Would you go outside to check the breaker box yourself? Think about it. Really think about it. Because Jennifer Perez had to make those same calculations in the dark, not knowing that someone was already on her porch. Someone was already watching. Someone was already waiting. Jennifer's body was discovered at 11:47 a.m. on Monday, March 15th. A coworker had become concerned when Jennifer missed their 9 a.m. video conference call without warning. That wasn't like her. She was reliable, professional, always communicated. When texts and calls went unanswered, the coworker contacted Jennifer's sister in Spokane. The sister called the Lake Stevens Police Department and requested a welfare check. Officer Ryan Mitchum arrived at the Cedar Lane address at 11:39 a.m. He noted that the front door was closed but unlocked. The porch light was off. There was mail in the mailbox from Monday morning's delivery. He knocked. No answer. He announced himself. No response. He tried the door handle. It turned. That's when standard procedure became something else entirely. Jennifer Perez was found in her living room, approximately 8 feet from the front door. She was deceased. She had suffered multiple stab wounds to her chest and neck. The medical examiner would later determine she'd been dead for approximately 12 hours, putting time of death somewhere between 10 p.m. and midnight on Sunday night. There were defensive wounds on her hands and forearms. She had fought. God, she had fought. The house showed signs of struggle but not ransacking. A lamp was broken. Furniture was displaced, but nothing appeared stolen. Her purse was on the kitchen counter, cash inside. Her laptop was on the coffee table. Her phone was found near her body, shattered, like it had been thrown or knocked from her hand during the attack. The pizza box was still on the kitchen counter. 3 slices missing, everything frozen in the moment between normal life and violent death. But here's what detectives noticed immediately. The electrical box on the side of the house. The main breaker was in the off position. Someone had turned off Jennifer's power from outside. And when they processed that gray metal panel for evidence, they found something. Partial fingerprints. Fresh. Clear enough for analysis. The Lake Stevens Police Department immediately coordinated with the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office and requested FBI assistance given the calculated nature of the crime. This wasn't a random break-in. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was premeditated. Planned. Someone had targeted Jennifer Perez specifically. But why? Who? The security camera footage from her porch was recovered during the initial investigation. The DVR system had been installed by the previous homeowner, and Jennifer had maintained it but rarely checked it. The system had about 6 hours of battery backup after main power loss, but it only recorded when motion was detected. That 12-second clip you watched was the last thing it captured before the battery died. Investigators watched it dozens of times. They enhanced it. They analyzed every pixel. They saw what you saw: a pizza delivery, a transaction, a generous tip, and then darkness, and then a shadow. Detectives pulled Jennifer's order history from Scoot and Go. The delivery on March 14th at 8:22 p.m. was assigned to driver Edward Cooper, 26 years old. He'd been working for Scoot and Go for 4 months. He lived in Marysville, about 20 minutes south. He had a record, not violent, but there. Petty theft at 19. Possession of stolen property at 22. He was on probation, working delivery to make ends meet, staying out of trouble, or so it seemed. On March 16th, Detective Sarah Chen and her partner knocked on Edward Cooper's apartment door. He answered. He was cooperative at first. Yes, he remembered the delivery to Cedar Lane. Yes, he remembered the woman. Yes, she tipped him well. $50. He seemed surprised they were asking. Why would they care about a pizza delivery? Then they told him Jennifer Perez was dead, murdered. And they needed to know where he was Sunday night after his shift ended. Cooper's demeanor changed. You know that shift, right? That moment when someone realizes they're not just answering friendly questions anymore? When the reality crashes down that they're being looked at for something terrible? Cooper said he worked until 9:30. He went home. He was alone. No alibi. No one who could verify his whereabouts during the critical window between 10 p.m. and midnight. Detectives asked if they could take his fingerprints for elimination purposes. He hesitated. Then he agreed. What else could he do? Refusing would only make him look guilty. The prints were processed against the partials from Jennifer's electrical box. And this is where the case exploded. They matched. Edward Cooper's fingerprints were on Jennifer Perez's breaker panel. He was arrested on March 18, 2021, charged with first-degree murder. Held without bail. The evidence seemed overwhelming. His prints at the scene. His presence at her house hours before she died. The footage showing him casing the location. The massive tip providing motive. He'd seen she had cash. He'd come back for more. Premeditated. Calculated. Murder. But Edward Cooper said something during his interrogation that changed everything. Something that investigators couldn't ignore no matter how badly they wanted to. He said he'd been to that house before, not on March 14th. Before. Weeks before. He'd delivered to Jennifer Perez at least 3 times in the previous month. And one of those times, maybe mid-February, the porch light wasn't working. She'd asked him if he knew anything about electrical work. He'd mentioned he'd helped his uncle with basic wiring. She asked if he'd mind looking at her breaker box. She'd pay him. He did. He flipped breakers, checked connections, determined the bulb was just burned out. She paid him $20. He changed the bulb. He left. That's why his prints were on the electrical panel. That's his explanation. And the thing is, detectives couldn't completely disprove it. Jennifer's texts showed she'd mentioned to a friend in February that her pizza guy helped fix my porch light. So sweet. It corroborated his story. But it didn't eliminate him as a suspect, it just complicated things. The prosecution argued that Cooper's previous access to the property made the crime even more calculated. He'd learned the layout, he'd seen she lived alone. He'd established familiarity, he'd used his prior legitimate access to set up a future attack. The defense argued there was no physical evidence putting Cooper inside Jennifer's home. No DNA, no fingerprints inside. No murder weapon ever recovered, just prints on an electrical box he'd admittedly touched before. The trial began in November 2021, 8 months after Jennifer's death. It lasted 3 weeks. The footage you watched was shown to the jury at least a dozen times. The prosecution walked them through every frame. Look at his positioning, look at how he lingers. Look at the shadow returning, this is a predator in action. But the defense presented something else. Phone records. Edward Cooper's phone pinged off cell towers in Marysville from 9:45 p.m. through 11:30 p.m. on March 14th. His apartment was in Marysville. Lake Stevens was 20 minutes away. Could he have driven back to Cedar Lane, killed Jennifer, and returned without his phone showing it? The prosecution said yes. He could have left his phone at home, created a digital alibi. The defense said that was speculation without evidence. Then came the testimony that fractured the case even further. A neighbor 3 houses down from Jennifer on Cedar Lane, Martin Cho, he'd been walking his dog around 10:30 p.m. on March 14th. He saw a dark sedan parked on the street near Jennifer's house. Not a scoot-and-go scooter. A sedan. He didn't think much of it at the time. People park on streets. But he remembered it because as he walked past, someone was sitting in the driver's seat. Just sitting there. In the dark, watching the houses. Edward Cooper drove a 2003 Honda Civic, dark blue, but he told police it was parked at his apartment complex all night. And here's the thing. Scoot-and-go drivers used scooters provided by the company. They didn't use personal vehicles. So if Cooper returned to Jennifer's house, why would he drive his car? Why not use the scooter? And if he didn't drive his car, who was in that sedan? The jury deliberated for 4 days. 4 agonizing days while Jennifer's family waited for justice, and Edward Cooper sat in a cell maintaining his innocence. On November 19, 2021, they announced they were deadlocked. Hung jury. Mistrial declared. The prosecution immediately announced they would retry the case. But before the second trial could begin, something happened. Something that ripped this case wide open and exposed just how wrong everyone had been. In February 2022, a woman named Angela Simmons was attacked in her home in Everett, Washington, about 15 miles from Lake Stevens. She survived, barely. Her attacker had cut her power, entered through a back window, and assaulted her with a knife. She fought back hard enough that he fled. And she saw his face. She gave police a description: dark hair, medium build, late 20s, wearing dark clothing. Police developed a suspect, a man named Kyle Hutchins, 29 years old. No prior relationship with Angela Simmons. When they searched his apartment, they found trophies, photographs, driver's licenses, items belonging to 3 other women. Women who'd been attacked in their homes over the past 18 months. Women who'd had their power cut before the attacks. Women who'd all survived, traumatized, but alive. And they found something else. A red hoodie, dark work pants, a baseball cap. Clothes that matched what the delivery driver wore in Jennifer Perez's security footage. Kyle Hutchins had worked for Scoot-and-Go from November 2020 through January 2021, the same time as Edward Cooper. They'd both been drivers. They'd both worked the Lake Stevens area. And here's the thing that makes your blood run cold. Hutchins had been fired from Scoot-and-Go in late January 2021 for customer complaints. Inappropriate comments to women who answered the door alone, making them uncomfortable. But Scoot-and-Go hadn't reported it to police. They just terminated him and moved on. After he was fired, did Kyle Hutchins stop delivering? No. He kept the uniform. He kept the red hoodie and the cap. And investigators believe he stole or bought a Scoot-and-Go scooter off someone. He continued showing up at doors, pretending to be a legitimate delivery driver, gaining access to women's homes, learning who lived alone. The evening of March 14, 2021, Edward Cooper made a legitimate delivery to Jennifer Perez at 8:22 p.m. That footage is real. That was really him. But at some point that evening, Kyle Hutchins was watching, following, targeting. He'd likely seen Edward make the delivery. Maybe he'd been casing the neighborhood. Maybe he'd delivered to that house himself before he was fired and remembered it. Maybe he saw the lights in Jennifer's house and chose her at random. What they know is this. Kyle Hutchins' DNA was eventually matched to evidence found under Jennifer Perez's fingernails. Evidence that had been collected during the autopsy but couldn't be matched because Hutchins wasn't in any criminal DNA database at the time. But after his arrest in the Angela Simmons case, his DNA was entered into the system. And it matched Jennifer's case. Definitively. Undeniably. Edward Cooper was exonerated completely on March 3, 2022, nearly 1 year after his arrest, after 8 months in jail awaiting trial. After his life was destroyed by suspicion and accusation. After the entire world watched that footage and assumed he was a monster. He wasn't. He was just a delivery driver who touched a breaker box while trying to help someone, who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, who became the easy suspect because the real killer was still hunting. Kyle Hutchins was charged with the first-degree murder of Jennifer Perez in April 2022. He was also charged with 4 counts of attempted murder for the attacks on Angela Simmons and 3 other women. He went to trial in September 2022. This time, there was no doubt. DNA evidence. Testimony from survivors who identified him. The trophies found in his apartment. The pattern of attacks. All of it pointed to a serial predator who had been operating for over a year, targeting women who lived alone, cutting their power, invading their homes. During the trial, prosecutors presented their theory of what happened on March 14, 2021. They believe Hutchins followed Edward Cooper on his delivery route that evening. When Cooper left Jennifer's house, Hutchins stayed behind. He watched the house. He saw the lights on. He saw she was alone. Around 10:15 p.m., he approached the electrical box on the side of the house and cut the main breaker. Then he went to the front door. That's the shadow you saw in the footage. That's the figure peering through the glass. Jennifer was inside in the dark, confused. Maybe scared but not panicking yet. She likely thought it was just a blown fuse. She grabbed her phone for the flashlight. Maybe she was about to go check the breaker herself. And then she heard something. Maybe a knock. Maybe the sound of her door handle turning. She would have looked. And through the window in her door she would have seen him. A man in delivery clothes. The pizza guy? Maybe she thought he'd forgotten something. Maybe he'd dropped his phone or needed to ask a question. Did she unlock the door, or did Kyle Hutchins force it? The evidence suggests the lock was engaged, but the door wasn't damaged, so investigators believe Jennifer opened it herself. One final act of trust. One final mistake. He attacked immediately. She fought. She tried to run deeper into the house. She tried to call for help. Her phone showed she'd attempted to dial 911, but the call never connected. The phone was destroyed during the struggle. And in her living room, 8 feet from the door she'd answered thinking she was safe, Kyle Hutchins stabbed Jennifer Perez 17 times. 17. He left her there. He took nothing. This wasn't about robbery. This was about power, control, violence for its own sake. On October 7, 2022, Kyle Hutchins was found guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, 4 counts of attempted murder, multiple counts of burglary and assault. The jury took less than 6 hours to convict him. At his sentencing in December 2022, he showed no remorse. He made no statement. He just stared ahead while Jennifer's sister read a victim impact statement, describing a woman who'd been kind, generous, talented, and alive. A woman who tipped a pizza guy $50 because she was happy. A woman who helped fix a delivery driver's mistake with patience instead of anger. A woman who opened her door because she wanted to believe people were good. Kyle Hutchins was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. He is currently housed at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla. He will die there. But Jennifer Perez died at 28 in her living room because a predator saw an opportunity and took it. That footage you watched at the beginning, look at it again in your mind. That's Jennifer's last moment of normalcy. That's the last transaction she'll ever make. The last time she'll answer her door. The last time she'll smile at a stranger and assume safety. And yes, Edward Cooper was the person in that specific footage. But he wasn't the killer. The killer came later, in the darkness, wearing the same clothes, playing the same part. But he wasn't there to deliver anything. He was there to take everything. What haunts me about this case, what should haunt all of us, is how easily it happens. Jennifer Perez didn't make a catastrophic mistake. She didn't invite danger in. She ordered pizza on a Sunday night. She tipped generously because she was in a good mood. She lived her life, and a monster found her anyway. That's the truth we don't want to face. That's the reality that makes us check our locks twice and jump at sounds in the dark. Sometimes there's no pattern, no prevention, no way to see it coming. The Lake Stevens Police Department and the FBI have since investigated whether Kyle Hutchins is responsible for other unsolved murders in the region between 2020 and 2022. There are 3 cases with similar characteristics: power outages before the attack, women living alone, no forced entry. The investigations are ongoing. Jennifer Perez may not have been his first victim. She was just the first one where they caught him. If you're watching this video, I need you to do something for me. I need you to remember Jennifer Perez. Not as a victim, not as a statistic, but as a person. A 28-year-old graphic designer who was good at her job, who loved her family, who was kind to delivery drivers, who deserved to eat pizza and drink wine and scroll through Instagram and make brunch plans and live. Just live. And if this case teaches us anything, it's that we have to look out for each other. Jennifer's coworker who called for a welfare check when she missed that meeting. That awareness mattered. That attention to detail mattered. It didn't save Jennifer, but it got her justice faster. It potentially saved the next victim by connecting the dots sooner. We have to pay attention. We have to care when something feels off. We have to be the people who make the call. If this story affected you, if you want to see justice for victims like Jennifer Perez, if you believe these stories need to be told so we remember and we learn and we stay vigilant, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, share this video. Because every case we cover is a person who never returned home. A life cut short. A family left with questions and grief and a hole that can never be filled. Thank you for watching. Thank you for bearing witness to Jennifer's story. And please, lock your doors. Trust your instincts. And if something feels wrong, it probably is. See you in the next one.